You know, I said in a video, a few videos ago, I forget how far it's been now, that they're doing like construction in the alley where they've like doubled down. Now they're jackhammering concrete. So if you hear it, I can't do anything about it. I went out there yesterday and I was like, how long are you guys gonna be kind of working out here? We sort of have a hard time filming video where you guys are, you know, sawing concrete and jackhammering. They're like, oh, like an hour. 24 of those hours later, here we are. So if you hear it, I apologize. But anyway, we'll get right to it. Today's video, I've had this for a while now. Wasn't sure I was gonna necessarily review it, but I went ahead and decided to. This is the lian-li 011 Mini, or Dynamic Mini. The 011 Dynamic is probably the most popular case I have ever seen in the history of this channel because of its ease of use, its layout, the distribution plate support, and the fact that it makes water cooling extremely easy with the way you can add distro plates and stuff. So they took that design and they shrunk it into a mini ITX format. So let's unbox it today, let's take a look, and let's see if this is worth your mini ITX dollars. Today's video is sponsored by me and these 3 graphics cards we're giving away. You can't see them because they're not actually here right now. Why? Because I want you to click the link down in the description below to see exactly what cards they are. Worldwide, for free, anywhere in the world where giveaways are not prohibited. So if you want to learn all about which cards we're giving away and how to enter and when it ends and all that sort of stuff, then you're gonna have to pause this video, click the link, and go and enter. Don't wait, you'll be sad if you did. You know, like Wayne Gretzky said, the only shot you miss is the one you take and you didn't 100% do. Okay, so there's a few different versions of this, just like there was with the regular 011 Dynamic. This is the Air Mini. So this one is optimized for airflow. That doesn't mean that you can't use it for water cooling. And I even cut a hole in the top and it's still suction cupping like crazy. All right, whatever. So what you're basically gonna find between the Air version and the non-Air version is a mesh front panel for the most part. This panel, as you guys recall with the standard 011 Dynamic, is solid. And you would see a distro plate here or a distro plate on the backside. But the idea with this one, obviously, is letting in as much airflow as possible. But, like I've already said, you can obviously water cool an air flow. In fact, I prefer sometimes to water cool the airflow cases because radiators need airflow too. I don't know why sometimes that was crispy. Let's see if this side does it. Yeah. I know this is. I can't get the. It's actually a pretty thick case too for a mini, mini but chonker. If that makes sense, like how wide it is. So they literally took an 011 Dynamic and were just like, shoo, shoo, but kept the width. I mean, look at this. All right, so where to start? This is the black brushed metal version. So yeah, the top has a nice little brush button. We've got USB-C, we got our audio headphone combo jack, 2 USB 3.0s. But if we take a look at the top already, you can see obviously airflow ventilation on the top and airflow ventilation plus 2 fans pre-installed on the front. So that's nice to see. And so just like the other versions of this case, you take the top panel off, which as you can see right there, perforated for your PC's cooling pleasure. Then we can slide up the side glass, just like this, which is tempered glass. Be careful. And where you would normally have tempered glass on the front, now you just actually have a fan cage right here, which is removable. It's removable to make it easier to install like a 240 millimeter or a 280 millimeter AIO. We have 2 140 millimeter fans pre-installed and a 120 millimeter exhaust fan. Which makes this interesting too is the fact that usually the Dynamic does not have a rear exhaust fan right here. It has ventilation, like with little vertical cuts, but this has honeycomb and a fan. This is all about exchange of air. You still have the fan mounts on the bottom, so you could do a bottom mounted rad or bottom mounted uplift fans, and I call them uplift because you could choose to not use the enter the front, exit the rear design. You could still go with the standard Dynamic, bring in all the air from the bottom, use convection as well as airflow assist, exhaust fans on the top, and have a nice convection type heat rise airflow so that you are getting, as long as you don't have this on carpet and it's obstructed in some way, you'd get a pretty good rise of air and airflow that way. I do think you'd be a little bit more restricted by doing that versus having them come in the front, because this is unobstructed, whereas this has a small channel of air that it has to overcome, plus a filter. We all know filters restrict airflow, but they also restrict dust, so there's a trade-off there. If you take it out, you have more airflow, but obviously you'll have a little bit more dust accumulation. But the nice thing is, it's harder for dust to be sucked up through the bottom than it is for dust to be sucked into the front, because any dust that's falling is going to get picked up by this airflow and brought into your case. On the bottom, it's sort of blocked by the case, and since you have this updraft, dust won't be accumulating here. You have a little bit less dust that way to worry about. Power supply, it uses a full ATX power supply, where a lot of times you have these mini ITX cases that will use SFX power supply. But in this particular instance, you can see we do have provisions here for a full-size ATX. Now let me take a look at the bracketry and see. Nope. This one does not come with an SFX adapter. I was curious if it did. More often than not, the SFX power supplies will come with their own adapter. That way, if you have an SFX power supply, you mount the adapter to the power supply, and then that goes in here and then fills up the hole. So it will support both. Has a little support stand right here for that power supply, so it's not bouncing and hitting the floor there. Just like we know with the full-size dynamic, we have a hard drive mounting cage right here, so you could do a 2.5-inch hard drive there, 2.5-inch hard drive right there. They've got the isolating standoffs. The reason why you see this upside down snowman looking shape here is you have the rubber grommets which mount directly to the hard drive. You stick them in the hole, slide it down, and then you have isolation there if you're using like a spinning 2.5-inch or a laptop hard drive. This also unmounts. Why would they do a thumb screw on the top and a standard screw on the bottom? That's gripe number one. If you're gonna make it toolless, commit. Oh, and they can't forget the brushed logo there with the Der Bauer, because Roman himself had a lot of design input on this case. So now when you open that up, you see you have access to more stuff here. This can also be hard drive mounts, whether they be 2.5-inch drive or 3.5-inch drive. So you have room here for large 3.5-inch drives. You also have a drive cage right here that if you remove this little cover, you have access to your sleds. You can mount more 2.5-inch, 3.5-inch, or any sort of drive accessory, whether it be a fan controller that fits in there, an RGB controller like you'd find with the Corsair Commander Pro or the Commander Core. Anything that maybe uses a control box could be double-sided taped or mounted using those holes right there. This cage is also removable. Nope, this one's not, it's riveted in. It's removable with a drill if you want to take it off and open up this space for some reason. The downside is it does sort of block getting to the backside of the motherboard here. So if this was tool or removable with screws, screw there, pull it out, then you had access to the backside of the motherboard if you needed to ever service the water block or put a new backplate or something on there. Otherwise, you have to pull the motherboard out. In my opinion, a design oversight, something that should have been screws, not rivets. But again, there's no perfect case out there so far. These are also toolless and removable to expose the vertical radiator slash fan mount that the Dynamic series is known for. It's known for allowing fans and radiators to be put in all sorts of non-conventional places. And I feel like lian-li really kicked off the biter aspect, yeah, 1990s there, the biter aspect of going, hey, lian-li made a vertical mount and that looks really popular, so we should make a vertical mount too. And now all kinds of people are doing vertical mounts right near the motherboard tray. But you could have, because if you look here, the motherboard panel side, or the back side, it's also ventilated. So it's ventilated here, where your hard drives and stuff are, as you see right there, so you can get some radiating heat out. Or your power supply fan facing the back is gonna get fresh airflow through the case panel itself. But because you obviously need these fans, if you're gonna have a radiator or fans right there, be able to pull in air, it is perforated. Not gonna be the highest of airflow, but certainly better than if it were a solid panel, right? So the front panel slides up as well to expose the front fans, as you can see, and that's something that's very new to the airflow version of these cases. They do have a dynamic airflow as well in the large size, but this gives you access to these screws that are holding in this front, I don't want to call it a tray, this front frame here. This is where you can mount your fans and your radiators to. I love when these are removable. Just makes it so much easier to get your radiators and your fans mounted to it. without having to deal with working inside the case. So as soon as you take off these 4 locking screws, it slides up. And as you can see, they're individual, which I think is odd. I feel like that should have been a single piece. I'm not sure why they're individual like that, but they are. So it means, which means once you go to actually mount your radiator and stuff to it, the radiator will hold those clamps together. Then you're gonna be able to, want to put them in as a whole solid unit. That'll make it a little bit awkward when it comes to putting together a radiator and such, because these might end up being spaced slightly different, or you'll need to make sure that these are at least touching when you put your rad in there. Because if we look at the 120 side, you can see how the holes are oblong. So you'll need to make sure that you mount the rad so that these are touching. That way the tabs that have to meet on the inside there, like if this is too far apart, then they won't line up. So you need to make sure when you mount it that these are touching. Otherwise, it won't fit back in there. Now, this is an extremely modular case. So not only does it fit ITX motherboards, it also fits micro ATX, which is why it's kind of on the big side. But it does come with this additional slot right here. So what this allows you to do is if you want to run a top radiator, in the config that it comes with, let's look at the back side. With the config that it comes with the radiator moved all the way up as high as it'll go, you can see the radiator would be interfering with anything motherboard-wise, even though it's offset. So what you can do is you can undo all of these modular pieces, take out the bottom 2 7 slots, which is odd because you don't get 7 slots with a micro ATX motherboard. But I digress. You can slide this whole thing down like so. Slot it up here like so. So now you pushed everything down. You have clearance for a top rad. So it pushes everything down if you're gonna be using a top radiator. So that modularity is kind of nice. You have a 5-slot mode, an ITX mode, a 5-slot mode, and a 7-slot mode. Even though this is a small case, you don't have to make the compromise of only choosing to go with ITX or micro ATX. You can fit, as you can see right here, a full-size ATX motherboard, no problem, and it just fills up that much. I don't know if I would necessarily put an old FX board in here like I'm showing, but it's the only standard ATX board that I have. As you can see, that fits in there just like that, and it really just fills up that space and it looks nice. You could potentially have overhang issues, but if we take a look here, you can see right there it's close, and with the motherboard all the way back, it almost touches the RAM, and this is standard height RAM. So if you're running like an extra tall RAM or something with a big heat sink on there, once you add your fans, you're more than likely gonna interfere. So that's why they have that drop down mode where you can put in a micro ATX board, pull the height of it down, and then you're not gonna have that interference. But as you can see, this is not a mini ITX case, although the word mini might make people believe that it is. You can obviously fit a full ATX. Even an eATX, if you weren't gonna use this area and just let it overhang, because of the 90-degree grommet, you could then have your cable still come around and make it to your eATX board. You can see you've got all of these different holes here that are intervaled for that amount of spacing. So you would take the standoffs, which are pre-installed, and you would move them down to the lower position, and you can see you've got about almost 50 millimeters worth of clearance at the top, so you don't have any interference with your fans and your rads. So that's nice to see. And like I said, because airflow cases make great water cooling cases, because airflow to the rads, you can see the benefit now of still water cooling a case like this. So the amount of modularity built into this case is pretty awesome. I have no doubt that by now there is aftermarket support for this case for things like distribution blocks, whether they mount on the back right here, the front or the rear. Well, not necessarily the rear. But you can see now, if you were to put an ITX motherboard in here, you have all sorts of room for big rads on the bottom if you wanted. Or if you wanted to put radiators on the top hanging down, you do have multiple offsets here that you can play with. So you make sure that they are offset towards the glass. That way they hang down in front of the motherboard, so you don't have any interference there. So if I grab a 280 mil rad, which is what this guy is right here, we could, as you see, have plenty of room to mount that. You're not gonna be able to fit a 360 down here. The 360 definitely is longer than the case when you add the tank on there. But you can mount one right there. Is it gonna fit right here and line up? Yes. You can fit right there. And then you could obviously center it because it is slotted. The fans would still fit on this side. So you see the depth there? The fans will fit there. So if you see the amount of depth we have room for the fans and still have some airflow volume in front of it. And if you look in here, we're still not anywhere near interfering with our bottom fans. And then we can still fit our rad on the front if we want and not come anywhere near interfering with either the bottom, there, or here. It would be a little bit of a tubing. It'd be interesting tubing-wise, how you're gonna make all that fit, but you could do it. So as a water cooling enthusiast like myself, the 011 Air Mini, I feel like makes a better water cooling case than the standard one. So there you have it. There's the complete teardown and first look, and I have thermal paste on my hands from that motherboard. So they're sticky now, of the 011 Air Mini, which, don't let the name fool you, you can absolutely fit a full-size ATX, eATX, extra width if you just let it hang over. You could put a thread ripper in here for lulls if you wanted. Just let it hang over the side, have your top rad, have your bottom rad, make sure they're offset enough with your RAM so that it's not gonna interfere with the RAM. Bottom, top RAM, air-cooled graphics card, big old thread ripper, 56,000 threads of computing power in here, and it would just look cool, and it would not be hindered in any way whatsoever with the airflow of the case. It's one of those where I wish it was like 1 inch or like 25 millimeters longer, because then you could have fit two 360s in here, which would give you a whole nother 240 worth of radiator cooling. It looks like it should fit, that looks like that should fit a 360, right? No, it'll fit a 280, not with an ATX or eATX motherboard. You've got to use the drop-down mode with the MATX, but you could fit a 280 on the top, a 280 on the bottom, and have a ton of cooling potential. So sound off in the comments below if you guys are already using this case. Like I said, it's been out for a while already. We just now got around to it. I don't see there being a whole lot of compromises on this one here. An airflow case that could still fit 3 radiators in there, or obviously a butt ton of fans to have massive amount of airflow. Modularity, so you could fit the size motherboard that you want in there. You could fit at least 6 hard drives in this thing without any sort of problem. And if you bust out the double-sided tape, 42 drives. Possibilities are kind of endless on this one. It's just a smaller version of an already super popular case. All right, count off in the comments below. So if you're already using it, sound off in the comments below. Tell us how you're using it, what you fit in it, and whether or not after building it, you love it. It really doesn't weigh much when it's just the frame. But all right, guys, thanks for watching the 31 Days of J-Tober. Don't forget, giveaway down below, links, 3 graphics cards worldwide, 3 lucky winners. You'll be sad if it wasn't you. And don't be like, I didn't even know about this giveaway, because we've now had 19 videos and like 24 of them by the time you see this videos mention it.